Bruce McCandless's spacewalk. By all means, space exploration is a very dangerous venture. Particularly if you're about to fly to outer space, any astronaut would want to take every single precaution in the NASA handbook. Not Bruce McCandless II, though. As the STS-41B specialist, Bruce became the first NASA astronaut to float in outer space without any constraints and support from his space shuttle. Sounds dangerous, right? Well, it was. That doesn't mean that the entire mission wasn't safe. The only alarming thing about the entire experience was that NASA was experimenting with the spacewalk for the first time. It was the first use of the Manned Maneuvering Unit, or the MMU, which was entirely a hand-controlled device, propelling using nitrogen. Previously, astronauts would use restrictive tethers for spacewalking. Using tethers or restraints not only restricted their mobility in outer space, but limited the scope of the exploration as well. With the use of MMU, astronauts could reach any crook and corner of their mission. But of course, the MMU had to be tested, and Bruce McCandless was the one who took on the daring journey. As the mission specialist, the astronaut stepped out from his shuttle and used his hands to hover above the Earth. Believe it or not, his hands and a few buttons were the only things controlling his entire movement. His space shuttle, called the Challenger, was a few meters away. But since no tethers were involved, any chances of malfunction would have ended up in an entirely different scenario. Thankfully, we got a hero in Bruce McCandless II. That doesn't mean Bruce wasn't apprehensive, though. He was always lurking around Challenger just in case of an emergency. But even more so, his very worried wife was watching him live from the space station. What was really frightening about the spacewalk was the fact that the MMU was still being tested and tweaked before it was deployed. In fact, Bruce was one of the engineers who was working on it. It was a huge risk, but it had to be done. Not to mention, the spacewalk had to last long enough to test the MMU through all protocols. So for more than 6 hours, the astronaut was hovering right outside the Earth. The speed of the device was 1,800 miles per hour, and the angle of the device was such that the sun was shining directly at Bruce. Incredible photo, and an even more incredible feat. Number 5. Mysterious Music. NASA was very forthcoming with the pictures of Apollo 10. The entire mission represented everything that the space agency was capable of, including sending a man to the moon. And it did so through Apollo 11. By all means, the moon landing venture is plagued with many theories and uncertainties, but so is its predecessor, Apollo 10. Mostly the only pictures we see of the mission are pretty typical. We see astronauts Thomas Stafford, John Young, and Eugene Cernan talking to each other as they orbit the moon. But even in those pictures and video recordings, there's a moment of hesitation, as if the team of astronauts saw something that they weren't supposed to see. Even though it took some digging, NASA made some of the discoveries from the Apollo 10 mission public in 2008. But we didn't get to know the full extent of the extraordinary event. The agency was very ambiguous with the details. All we knew was that the team of astronauts had heard some strange noises. Turns out the perplexed faces of the astronauts benchmarked a huge discovery. And NASA only leaked the accurate transcripts and footages in 2016, 47 years after the original 1969 mission. In the audio, we can hear bizarre music being blasted in the lunar orbit.
Boy, that sure is weird music. No. It's a whistling, like an outer space type thing.
The music is eerie, bone-chilling, and definitely reeks of outer space involvement. At first, you can call the music some sort of radio disturbance, but it would be quite an amateur mistake to make. You see, Apollo 10 was on the far side of the moon when they heard the strange noises. In that region, the spaceflight was out of radio contact with Earth, too. So, whatever the source of that noise was, it wasn't coming from Earth. That spooked the Apollo 10 astronauts real quick. They couldn't place the origin and the source of the creepy music. But of course, they were asked to keep their experience on the DL by NASA. In the audio, Eugene Cernan is heard asking his peers if they can also hear the whistling sound. They were so terrified that they debated telling the NASA chiefs that they aren't alone in the vastness of the universe. There was someone who was lurking around, and perhaps had a knack for music. Yet back in their time, to talk about the authenticity of aliens was a career suicide. They couldn't afford to compromise their next space mission. So, it was more of a hush-hush situation. Later on, the trio dubbed those unexplained noises as outer space music. Number 4. Doorway into Mars. Mars is full of secrets, and NASA's rover for the Martian surface is hell-bound to unravel them all. But there's one party that's more ambitious about the discoveries than the space agency itself. We are, of course, talking about the ET hunters and Mars conspiracy theorists. Every now and then, eagle-eyed viewers of the rover's live stream find something extraordinary, and their captured images or screenshots become the source of speculation and hypothesizing on the internet. We've already mentioned the mysterious and enigmatic pyramids and Stonehenge that probably exist on Mars. The fact that NASA takes such coincidences so lightly is concerning. Most of the discoveries are brushed off as coincidences or fragments of our wild imagination. Beyond that, the agency doesn't elaborate much and refuses to probe further into creepy instances. This is exactly why we know next to nothing about the mysterious doorway that was found in one of the rocky formations on the Red Planet. You heard that right? A doorway. NASA's rover, Curiosity, was probing into the east cliffs of the planet when people stumbled upon a door-shaped fracture in the Mount Sharp. And let's just say conspiracy theorists had a field day. Thanks to NASA's tendency to leak clear-cut, high-resolution pictures from the Martian mission, we could look into the fracture more closely. And oh boy, it doesn't look like a natural feature at all. It definitely looks like someone carved a door into Mount Sharp to build a sanctuary or a temple of secrets. On a closer look, you'd see the doorway wasn't made for average-sized humans. Since it is only 12 inches tall and 16 inches wide, it would be difficult for a mundane person to pass through the door. At best, it looks like a dog door. But then again, a lot of speculative literature around aliens show them as short-heighted. So, could it be that our alien friends made a door into Mount Sharp? NASA scientists don't think so. According to them, such fractures in Mars's bedrock are super common, and we shouldn't let our imagination run wild. But ET hunters know what they saw, and it's just not a common hole in the rugged mount. Number 3. CW Leonis stars are beautiful and romantic. Well, sometimes at least. The Hubble Space Telescope has taken images of the CW Leonis, a star that is on the verge of dying. For 2 decades, the star is devolving into complete debris and the dimness of any light it radiates. And finally, we have clear-cut images of how creepy stars could look when they are fighting against the dying of their light. What's really interesting about this star is how quickly it is dying. Typically, massive stars like Leonis don't go out easily. Just within 15 years, there has been a dramatic shift in its brightness, which is definitely an unusual trajectory for NASA. But what makes this star so scary? Well, when stars die, they're essentially running out of fuel to burn. Gradually, they turn into colossal monsters called the red giants. Now, these giants are some big gulpers. Yep, they start to swallow nearby planets and other outer space bodies due to their large size and gravity. And ever since NASA has linked the up-close image of the star, can't say we aren't a little jumpy. In particular, CW Leonis looks creepy because it has woven a cobweb of dust clouds around itself. It seems like the web is deadly for other bodies in outer space, as if CW Leonis wants to lure everything in its way to kill it. In a blog post, NASA said, the star looks like it's entrapped inside wispy orange spider webs that wrap around the star. Beams of light shine through the dust, like sunbeams on a partly cloudy day. Not to mention, the cobwebs are orange-red clouds of sooty carbon that the star has been leaking into space. So yeah, up there, the basic unit of life is in abundance and isn't going anywhere. Sure, the accumulation of carbon isn't a definite proof of astrobiological life, but it certainly helps with the theories. What actually helps in theorizing is the chemical composition and location of the star. Since it is a carbon star, meaning it is mostly made up of carbon, it has unique features for NASA to study. And it is convenient that CW Leonis is the closest carbon star from the Earth. Even then, it is 400 light-years away, but hey, you get the idea. But also, many scientists have dubbed CW Leonis as the trash star. Just like the interstellar trash, the star has propelled a lot of dust and debris in its vicinity. To get to the star, one would have to travel through the clouds of smoke and dust. An unpleasant journey indeed. Number 2. Meteoroid impact on Mars. For years, NASA has been selling us the Mars is potentially habitable story, and many of us actually believe that if the world was to end, we can possibly find other alternative means to live on the red planet. But most of us remain skeptical due to movies like Don't Look Up, or NASA's leaked images of a meteoroid's impact on Mars, and the resulting crater is as deep as an ocean. As per the space agency, smaller meteor impacts are common in the Earth's atmosphere. Once in more than 100 years, there is one considerable impact, but not enough to wipe the Earth clean. Plus, the technology has given us the means to detect any intruders before they hit the planet's surface. But can we say the same about Mars as well? Perhaps not. In 2022, NASA's seismogram on the red planet showed a massive earthquake rippling across the planet's surface. Scientists were ready to observe and study the seismographic data when they realized that the quake wasn't an ordinary movement in the planet's crust. It had been attacked by a massive meteor. The resulting crater is the largest and the deepest one observed by NASA, both in outer and inner space. Yep, the size of the crater is something that has never been seen in the observed part of the universe, and that has put some red flags on the future of NASA's missions on the planet. What's really bothersome is that the meteor impact has cut open the planet's surface, and NASA can see big ice boulders that were buried in the planet's equator. All things considered, this isn't good news, and the leaked images are terrifying. Number 1, the mechanic. Honestly, the Curiosity rover has helped NASA with monumental discoveries on Mars. But on the downside, it has fueled more and more uncertainty and doubt about the space agency's integrity. After all, the live stream is an open invite for the NASA doubters and conspiracy theorists to speculate. And when they churn up something unexplainable or creepy, NASA gives no substantial explanation other than, "Hey, y'all are seeing things." Yep, that's one way to steer the conspiracies, or perhaps invite some more. But this time, people saw something very close to the Curiosity rover. So close that for many ET hunters, there's little room for doubt. In a picture making waves on the internet, we can see a human-like figure working on the Curiosity rover, just like a NASA engineer would do to fix a bug or change some settings on the robot. Since the mysterious man is almost adjacent to the rover's camera, we can't see the exact image, but a shadow is very much there. Even from a single glance, we can see that the enigmatic figure is carrying an oxygen tank and tinkering with the robot. Was the person trying to steal something, or did its curiosity get the best of it? Pun intended, of course. It's hard to streamline many explanations behind the bizarre image. But the common consensus says that it's just not some coincidental shadow of a human-like figure. It is definitely something real. Either it could be a stranded man on the surface of Mars or an astrological being, favoring the latter, of course. Needless to say, many ET hunters were ecstatic to stumble on something that looked like a humanoid. Unless there's an alien base on Mars, it is difficult to accept a single image as conclusive proof of ET's existence. Not to mention, an alternative theory suggests that it's just an unusual shadow of some part of the rover that happens to look like a human being, the same way you'd spot a human image within the clouds formation. It isn't surprising that NASA scientists are also vouching for the weird shadow theory. According to them, Curiosity wouldn't have missed other signs of aliens if they existed, of course. But then again, it is hard to unsee the mysterious image. It definitely looks like a mechanic doing his honest day of work on the million-dollar rover. Plus, the sighting also seems to galvanize the popular theory that the U.S. has deployed a team of officers on Mars to gain an edge over its specialized outer space forces. In an effort to win the space race, those American soldiers live and thrive on Mars. Could it be one of the loyal soldiers fixing the rover? It's possible. Enjoyed this deep dive into NASA's secrets. Like this video.